Eventually, all humans die. What happens to them after they die? The body decomposes and returns to the planet. That much everyone knows. But what about their consciousness, their hearts, and their souls? The soul, too, returns to the planet, and not only those of humans, but everything on this planet. In fact, all living things in the universe are the same. The spirits that return to the planet merge with one another and roam the planet. They roam, converge, and divide, becoming a swell called the life stream. Life stream, in other words, is a path of energy of the souls roaming the planet. Spirit energy is a word that you should never forget. A new life. Children are blessed with spirit energy and are brought into the world. Then, the time comes when they die and once again return to the planet. I know, that sounds like some hippie shit, right? That's a direct quote from the video game Final Fantasy VII. I'll post a link to a video showing this scene from the game. It's dated and it's a little cheesy, but it means the world to me. I've spoken before about how much this game has impacted my life. As a child, this was the first time that the cycle of life and death was described to me. Even as a child, I didn't take it literally, which is odd considering how many other things I took literally at that age. We're talking somewhere between 7 and 10. I took it as a metaphor for change. Death or nothingness changes into life. A child is born, that child changes constantly, grows into an adult, then life changes back into death. It's constant. As for the whole bit about that life returning to the planet, causing more life, if you strip away the fantasy aspect of it, I think it makes sense. Even if you just think of it as a matter of space. One life ends so that it creates space for another life to begin and thrive, like plants. You can only have so much growing in one spot. Is this making sense? I know what you're thinking. I'm totally sober, though. Life is change. Some people toss and turn over the cliche question of what is the meaning of life. Am I going to tackle the meaning of life? Yeah, bitches. Indeed, I am. Sit back because this is going to take about 2 hours to get through. Just kidding. What is the meaning of life? To live it. No, it is that simple, but it's also not that simple. Because the life that everyone is going to live is different. For some, it's easier to define what living is for them, and for others, it's harder. For me, living life is a handful of things. It's mitigating pain and stress so that it's as small as a part of my life as possible, but at the same time, making the effort to not crumble in that pain and stress when pain and stress are unavoidable. Life, for me, is to be present in my own mind and in my day-to-day life, to still be who I am while I work through the pain and the stress. The other half of it is to enjoy and appreciate life. Appreciate the fact that I exist in this existence for as long as I get to exist in it. Simply to be happy and do things that are enjoyable. Simply to exist. You don't need much meaning in life. For some people, the search for that meaning is their meaning. Some people, sitting on a dock by the bay and watching the tide roll in is all those people need. I think there's a definite American egotism attached to the question, what is the meaning of life? Generally, when it's asked or when someone thinks about it, they think that the answer to the question, that grand meaning, is the meaning that applies to all humankind, instead of there being a unique answer to that question for each individual life. More than that, it's a mankind kind of egotism that we only consider life having true meaning for us, for humans. All life has meaning, has a purpose. It might seem so minuscule to our eyes that we don't even notice it or appreciate it or even respect it, but all life does. There is no living thing that comes into existence and simply exists with no desire to accomplish anything, even if the only desire is to assure that its existence continues to exist. Nothing exists that is like that. Jesus Christ, how many times am I going to say exist? Think about all of the variables since the beginning of time to this present moment that you're in right now. All of the variables that had to be in exactly the order that they've been in order for you to exist. I want to read that one more time. Think about all of the variables since the beginning of time to this present moment that you're in right now. All of the variables that had to be in exactly the order that they've been in order for you to exist. The fact that you exist is like winning a lottery that's bigger than any cash jackpot you've ever wasted money buying a ticket for. And check this out. Every other person you know won that jackpot too. Even every person that you don't know ever won that jackpot too. Every other thing that life or even any object that you can see or touch has also won that lottery. What? The simple fact that everything you see around you, anywhere you go, exists is a fucking miracle. You live in a miracle. You are a miracle. If you just think statistically, you are a miracle. Life doesn't have to be so complicated. Lots of people spend so much time stressing over how they should define their own existence that they forget just to exist. Your entire life is going to be experienced through the filter of your own mind. It's never not going to be like that. You more or less get to choose what that filter looks like. Don't forget that. Am I on drugs right now? Jeez, sometimes I just can't tell anymore. So, I digress from my main topic. Change. Change is constant. Change is guaranteed. Change, I don't know who first said this, but I know who first said it to me. It was my dad, who always told me throughout my formative years that there are three things that you can always count on in life. And that's change, taxes, and death. But death is kind of a form of change, isn't it? So really it's just change and taxes. That sounds fun. Kind of bleak, actually. Well, today I'm going to tell you about the first time I experienced real change. Biggest Low Podcast, number 10. What? We did it, sweet bitches. We did it. The big 1-0. Biggest Low Podcast, number 10. Mako Skies. So, you know how early in the morning, when what you would define as dawn hasn't quite peaked, but the darkness of night has definitely passed. There's a short period of time in between the two that I can only describe as blue. Everything is blue. A dark blue that slowly lightens as the morning rolls in. It basks everything in this cool glow, a sullen glow, or a peaceful one, depending on your current emotional state. It's rare that I find myself outside at that time of day. I'm never awake at that hour. We're talking about maybe 5 a.m., 4 a.m. But not that long ago, it happened. I stepped outside. The air was fresh. It was wet. The air was wet. You can feel it in your lungs and taste it on your tongue. I look around, and regardless of where I am, the scenery always looks the same. There's a deep, glowing blue. I breathe in the fresh, dewy air and feel the goose pimples forming on my arms and rolling up my back. Then something snaps in my mind. I don't realize it, but now I'm standing there in the morning cold, staring out blankly. I'm 10 years old again, or 11. I can't remember my exact age, but around that time, I was standing outside on a morning just like this one, a blue morning. I'm standing on the side of the street in front of an empty and closed gas station, watching the occasional car pass on the nearby highway. I remember being astounded by how blue everything was. I had never seen the world at that time of day before. I never knew how light could play off of things. It felt surreal. I didn't believe it. I thought, this is so pretty, but it has to be a dream. I wanted it to be a dream. I was trying to convince myself that it was a dream, so that maybe the night before would also be a dream. The night before this particular morning was the night that my parents told me that they were getting a divorce. Divorce is strange. Technically, it's just two people who are married deciding to not be married anymore. And what's wrong with that? Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. That's life. Get over it. Of course, it's more complicated than that, though. I don't know what it's like for an adult because I'm only recently an adult, and I have no intention of getting married or divorced anytime soon. I can speak on how it is for a kid, though. It's mainly confusion. Why is this happening, though? Like, how is this going to affect Saturday morning cartoons? No, really, you two don't get it. The Saturday morning cartoon model was working perfectly. Why are we trying to complicate this thing? I don't get it. I really didn't understand it as a kid. I just knew that it meant change, and change was scary. When is change not scary? It's easy to lose sight of your parents being people. You can go your whole life seeing every other human being as a human being but your parents. Without realizing it, you'll treat them like they're something else. Some people will treat them like they're something greater. Some people treat them like they're something less. Some people do both. Some people treat the mom differently, and some people treat the dad differently. In reality, they're just people. People who have their own childhood, people who have their own jobs, their own fears, their own triumphs, and their own shortcomings. When a divorce strikes, it's easy for the child to think, oh no, they aren't the perfect beings that I thought they were. Instead of thinking, they're just two people who can't make their relationship work anymore. Two people who are having issues. There's only so much a kid can put together, especially one that was as much of a dunce as I was. After my first big breakup, though, in my teens, my parents' divorce started to make more sense. I started to think, what if the same thing that just happened in my teens happened when I was like 30? Oh, fuck. Yeah, I'm glad this happened in my teens and not when I was 30. Your parents are just people, though, but there is one thing that separates them from most other people, and that's that they've been with you literally since the moment you began to exist. They really are just another human being. Be that as it may, that other little fact does make them unique in a way that's only unique to you. So, it's 5 a.m. I'm at a gas station on the side of a highway. I'm with my brother, my father, and my mother. and I'm completely lost in the manner of that morning. I remember thinking that I was on the cusp of some intense change. That this moment I was in was the last quiet and calm moment before everything got tossed upside down. And I was right. My dad called me over and said it was time to go. I can't remember if I was just too dumb to get it or it just wasn't explained to me yet, but I was leaving with my dad and my brother. My mom wasn't coming with us. I didn't understand why at the time. What was happening was we were going to go live with my dad's family in Chicago while they began to sort out the divorce stuff. I had to say goodbye to my mom for the first time in my life. That's when the reality of the situation set in. Once we hit the road, I stared out the window for as long as I could, and eventually I woke up. The blue was gone, we were still on the highway, and everything felt very, very real. It would be a very long time before I found myself in that same kind of morning. So there I am, staring blankly, at least a decade later. I realized then that it was nothing surreal. This is just what the morning looks and feels like at that time of day and in that time of the year. Regardless, it still filled me with deep sadness as I remembered saying bye to my mom for the first of many times and feeling the same uncertainty that I felt as a child. I don't know how long I stood there. I would catch another blue morning, sometimes on accident. Other times I would happen to be awake and I would run outside to see if it was there. Just like I did at the gas station, I would just stand there and just exist within it. I wanted to feel those feelings again. Those emotions are what make up life, and life is meant to be lived, good or bad. Now, these mornings make me very happy. The memories are still sad. That, of course, can't change. But I don't remember the bulk of my childhood. What I do remember are just flashes, 3-second memories, or just still frames. This small part, though, I remember vividly. To be able to recreate this memory and be able to perfectly empathize with myself as a 10-year-old simply by smelling the morning air, it helps me keep things in perspective. I was just a little kitten then. I was still innocent, just beginning a long journey where I would lose much of that innocence and then, eventually, earn it back. It reminds me of who I was, who I am now, and where I am now. I'm sharing this memory with you because it's the first time that I had to experience change. Sometimes it's something you choose to do, like you decide to move out and go to college. Other times it's forced upon you. And you have no choice but to roll with it. It's not always a bad thing. I don't think it can ever be a truly bad thing, though it may feel that way at the time. I think something good can always come from change if you keep your mind open, if you stay humble, if you don't victimize yourself, if you stay aware of the cosmic forces of existence and realize when they're throwing you a bone, when there's an opportunity for a break. The expression catch a break, I think, can be very literal. Sometimes you have to catch one. Change isn't always bad, or it can be bad, but that's just part of the molting process. You got to heat something up and break it down and heat it up and break it down again because it turns something into a more annealed and more refined object or person. Change only really becomes an issue when you fight against it, when you don't adapt to it. Make no mistake, change is an unstoppable force, and it always will be. And a lot of people try to be an immovable object, but they always budge, and many fall over. I was fighting change that morning as a child. I often think about what I would say if I could be there with myself when I was a child. But as an adult, right there on the side of that road, I would have told him that everything isn't going to be okay, and that it's going to be like that for a while, and that there's nothing he could do about that except to not forget to get back up. I would tell him that it's not going to be okay, but eventually it will be.